You thought awakening was the finish line. That once the veil dropped, the work was done. But it wasn't. That was just the beginning of the long road home. Let's be honest. Awakening shatters the illusion, but it doesn't rebuild the self. It burns the scaffolding of ego, but doesn't hand you a blueprint for what comes next. And that's why so many lose their way after waking up. Because nobody talks about the after, about how it feels to be free and lost, awake but aimless, empty but expected to function. In the last parts of this journey, we've uncovered why motivation collapses after awakening. We explored how the ego crumbles and how fear can no longer push you the same way. We learned what it means to shift from external goals to inner resonance. We touched on Jung's deep frameworks, working with archetypes, shadows, projections, and the terrifying silence that follows when your old identity dies. We began building from the self instead of the survival-driven ego. Now, in this final chapter, we go deeper, into the life after awakening. Not the spiritual highs, not the retreats or downloads, but the quiet alchemy of waking up on a Tuesday and wondering, how do I live this life now? How do I make decisions without a fixed identity? How do I find meaning when the old systems of reward and punishment feel like children's games? Jung called it the symbolic life, and without it, he said, modern man suffers a soul sickness. Let that sink in. Soul sickness, not because of trauma or ignorance, but because of a lack of symbolic living. This is the life lived with meaning, depth, connection to inner images, and alignment with something greater than the ego. It's the antidote to spiritual burnout, the medicine for the malaise that haunts the awakened. But there's a trap here, and it's subtle. After awakening, the ego doesn't vanish, it just gets clever. It puts on robes, it quotes scriptures, it seeks superiority through humility. This is what I call the spiritual showcase, a second skin of identity that masquerades as truth. It's more dangerous than the original ego because it wears the costume of awakening. And if you don't catch it, it will hijack your path all over again. So let's break this down. What does it really mean to live a symbolic life after awakening? And how do you know if you're living from the self or trapped in a refined ego? Here's the first distinction. Symbolic life doesn't mean dramatic gestures or cosmic significance in every detail. It's not about turning your grocery shopping into a ritual or chanting over your morning coffee. It's about perceiving your life as alive with inner meaning. Seeing your relationships, your setbacks, your routines, not as random or merely practical, but as reflections of deeper psychic movements. Jung said that the unconscious communicates through symbols, not logic. That means your outer life reflects inner content. That weird conflict with your friend, a symbol of a shadow part. The repeating failure in business, a symbol of a deeper self-sabotage. The depression after success, a message from the self that you're out of alignment. To live symbolically is to listen, not just to thoughts or insights, but to patterns, synchronicities, and the silent knowing that something is off. It means tracking your emotional responses like clues, asking, what is this really showing me about myself? It's not about perfection, it's about participation. Here's a simple framework. 1. Recognize the pattern. What's repeating in your life that feels charged or painful? 2. Find the image. What internal image or archetype might this reflect? Hero, martyr, child, tyrant, lover. 3. Dialogue with it. Journaling, active imagination, or simply feeling into it. What does this part want, fear, or protect? 4. Symbolic action. Take a step in the outer world that reflects a shift in the inner. Set a boundary. Start a ritual. End a loop. This is the alchemy Jung spoke of. Not theory. Transformation through participation. Now, let's talk about the spiritual ego. This is the part that emerges right after awakening, when the old self collapses and something new has to form. But because the self hasn't fully rooted yet, the ego steps back in with a new disguise. Look how awakened I am. It's subtle. It doesn't brag, it implies. It doesn't dominate, it condescends. It hides in language, posture, even service. And worst of all, it can mimic peace. But the spiritual ego isn't evil, it's scared. It's trying to re-establish control after the annihilation of awakening. It's a survival response, cloaked in incense. The key is not to kill it, but to expose it with compassion. To notice, that's not the self speaking, that's the old fear wearing white robes. So how do you return to authenticity? How do you stay rooted in the self when the ego is so adaptive? 3 principles. 1. Silence before speech. Don't explain your awakening, live it. 2. Service without show. Help where you're needed, not where you'll be seen. 3. Ritual over image. Build personal practices that mean something to you, not what looks spiritual. The final theme is the alchemy of the ordinary. Because here's the hard truth. After the lights of awakening fade, life continues. Bills, dishes, conflict, fatigue. And if you still believe that your spiritual life is only found in peak states, you'll start chasing again, seeking enlightenment like a drug. But the self is not loud. It doesn't shout through visions. It whispers through presence, through how you walk into a room, through how you listen, through how you endure boredom without escaping. So what's the real practice now? Live your normal life like it's sacred. Do the ordinary with symbolic intention. Make breakfast like it's a ceremony. Respond to anger like it's a teacher. Face failure like it's an initiation. That's what it means to live from the self. You are not here to escape the world. You are here to transform in it. Enlightenment is not an exit, it's an entry point into a deeper, more honest, more exacting life. Not a life of floating above reality, but of penetrating it so fully that even the mundane becomes holy. Symbolic life is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Because without it, post-awakening becomes a limbo. You've outgrown the ego, but haven't yet rooted in self. You no longer believe the old game, but you're not yet fluent in the new language. That's where most seekers get stuck. In this grey zone, half dead to illusion, half alive to truth, drifting, waiting, hoping that another breakthrough will fix what feels empty. But you don't need another breakthrough. You need structure. You need to build the vessel for your new consciousness. That means habits, rituals, service, challenge, friction. A real life, not just a spiritual idea of one. Here's a core framework I use with clients who feel lost after awakening. I call it the pillars of embodied selfhood. It's how we move from symbolic insight to embodied transformation. 1. Anchor through routine. Build a consistent daily structure, not to control life, but to give the self a stable platform to express through. Mornings, meals, work, rest. Don't underestimate the spiritual power of consistency. 2. Express with integrity. Speak less, but more honestly. Create things that reflect your actual experience, not just your aspirations. Share your real questions, not your rehearsed wisdom. 3. Choose meaning over mood. Your moods will fluctuate. That's normal, but meaning is steady. Choose actions that connect to your values, not just your state. Meaning sustains where motivation fails. 4. Reclaim the body. Get out of your head. Train, dance, walk barefoot, fast, breathe. The self wants to inhabit, not just observe your life. 5. Serve something larger. You didn't awaken just to enjoy peace. You awakened to become a vessel, mentor someone, help quietly. Use your clarity for the good of others. You see, symbolic life isn't about watching for signs. It's about becoming a living symbol yourself. A human being whose ordinary presence radiates alignment, humility, precision. That's power, that's authenticity, that's evolution. But beware, there's a cost. Living from the self means letting go of comfort, control, and even certainty. It means surrendering not just your fear, but your pride, your specialness, your desire to be seen as awakened. The self doesn't need that. Jung once said, "We don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Let that be your compass now. Not chasing bliss, but integrating shadow. Not seeking escape, but deepening engagement. Not wearing robes of peace, but becoming a storm of truth where necessary. If you feel empty, good. That's the soil where the symbolic life can grow. If you feel tired of the journey, good. That means the ego's addiction to seeking is breaking. If you feel like nothing makes sense anymore, perfect. It's time to make sense, not by finding answers, but by living them. And that brings us to the closing. You've come full circle, from awakening to collapse to reconstruction, from ego to emptiness to emergence. You've seen the trap of the spiritual persona, you've touched the stillness beneath identity, and now you're invited to live it. Not talk it, not post it, but walk it. The next video will open a new chapter. We'll explore how symbolic life touches every area: work, relationships, purpose, creativity. You'll learn how to live as a bridge between inner truth and outer complexity. How to embody paradox, How to stay rooted in self even when the world pulls you in 1,000 directions. So if this journey has spoken to something real inside you, subscribe. Don't just passively watch. Join the process. This isn't content, it's initiation. Because the path didn't end with awakening. It just got real.